Hi. I think we're going to get started. It's 2:01. My name's Dawn Reynolds. I'm the vicar here at St. Edward's, and I'm just so grateful that you are here and you all are committed to this. We call it creation care, and it's one of our missions of the Episcopal Church along with social justice. So thank you all for participating. Welcome. The restrooms are there, and just bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay!
I already gave an hour sermon, so.
All right, is that in the cloud? Can we access that?
Yeah.
And I want to welcome all of you who are out there on Facebook and Zoom, and remind you that the bathrooms are also on the side over here. Okay, a little bit of humor. So, my name's Mark Levy, and I had something to do with this. So, wait till after I sing. So, I wanted to especially thank Reverend Don for allowing us to use the space here cost-free. And I'll also direct you to the donation bucket, which may be going around at some point, at some interval during this to defray some of the costs. As maybe you've seen, we did a little bit of advertising in the Siuslaw News this past week, and maybe some of you saw that. It was hard to miss if you got those issues. So I want to also address a couple of things before we get started. As you are aware, there's this COVID thing. And when I started planning this months ago, there was no Omicron. So then we had to really think, how are we going to make this space safe? And I hope that we've made it safe enough for everyone. We have separate mics for the panelists, who I'll be introducing in just a few minutes. And of course, everyone's wearing masks. If you feel you want to get extra protection, we do have some of the KN95s. Where are those now?
They're in a little basket back here, and please take one. They keep telling us that these these protect against the particulate, so they're right there.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm wearing one from Peace Health, which says a lot about me that we don't need to know. So we have a lot to cover. Just very briefly, the order of the program will be the panelists will each present their program. So some of them are electronic, that's why we have a screen. And then we'll break and have, well, not break quite yet. We'll save your questions and comments. We'll be moving this mic to the front onto that mic stand, because this mic is what they call omnidirectional. You don't have to get to, maybe I should use a different word than omni. Another attempt at humor. So, when we get to that point, which we think is going to be about 3, or maybe just before 3, if people have questions, they can come up to the microphone and address any of we actually have 6 panelists, a couple of other people that I'll introduce that came over from Eugene. And and then we have a break, and we have some electric vehicles in the parking lot that some people have brought, and some others are coming over at 3 or a little bit after to demonstrate those if you're interested. And we have at least one bike, and then a few sedans that are electrical or hybrid, and of course that fits right in because we want to try to minimize our fossil fuel emissions, and cars do that. So let's get right to it because we have a lot to cover. I'm going to introduce three people from Beyond Toxics who came over from Eugene. And that's a statewide environmental justice organization. And Grace Brahler has a background in environmental and natural resources, law and policy, and earned her law degree from the University of Oregon. I knew I forgot my glasses somewhere. Yeah, they're in the car. Oh, that's a good place for them. She previously worked for the Ocean Water Futures Project, the Environmental and Natural Resources Law Center, the Oregon Clean Water Action Project, and Lincoln County. She now focuses on reforming state-level policy to ensure our communities and ecosystems remain resilient in the face of climate change. And that's one. And the second from Beyond Toxic is Paige Hopkins, who grew up in southeastern Washington, and completed her Bachelor's of Science in Environmental Studies at Portland State. During her time in school, she interned with Portland Fruit Tree Project to develop a mutual aid program for urban fruit tree produce within the Portland community. And this experience influenced her interest and passion for grassroots-led initiatives applied to environmental and climate justice issues. And then thirdly, we have Sophia Larabee. Did I get that right? Yes. Okay. Is a third-year student at U of O, and she's double majoring in environmental science and music. Well, we'll have to talk later. And a minor, and I think I'll make more money with the first thing.
Sure.
That's another thing we don't need to know about me. Okay. So she's a member of Kappa Alpha Theta sorority, as well as Divisi?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. The women identified a cappella group. Oh, at U of O. She also, we'll have to get you in for the next thing. Okay, Sophia is passionate about environmental justice and hopes to work with a governmental agency ensuring vulnerable communities are not subjected to environmental harm. So they're going to cover climate justice, findings from a countywide climate survey, and vulnerability assessment. And of course, how to get involved in local and statewide climate movements. So, take it away, Kate.
Thank you.
Grace is first.
Yes. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all so much. We are going to tag team this presentation or just a discussion for you all today. But we're very honored. It's always just really wonderful to receive such a warm invite from the folks out on the coast here. So we're really honored to be with you today, so thank you. So we wanted to kick off today by centering environmental and climate justice. Environmental injustice, including the proliferation of climate change, systemically impacts communities of color and low-income communities in Oregon, in the country, and around the world. The effects of climate change have a bigger impact on historically underserved communities, despite them being the least responsible for its leading causes. So, for example, toxic facilities like power plants or incinerators emit contaminants into the water, food, and air that communities take in. As we know, many of these facilities also are major emitters of carbon dioxide and methane, the top two drivers of climate change. But not all people are equally impacted. So race, even more so than class, is the #1 indicator for placement of toxic facilities in the country. And research shows that communities of color are often at much greater risk from air pollution from those facilities. People with limited incomes or seniors or people with disabilities or people experiencing chronic illnesses may have a harder time living through periods of severe heat stemming from climate change or being able to quickly and safely evacuate from major storms or fires. People with limited incomes may also have difficulty securing disaster insurance or rebuilding their homes or paying medical bills after these disasters. Language barriers similarly can make it difficult for migrant and refugee communities to get information about incoming storms or wildfires or evacuation orders or how to restabilize their lives following a disaster. Prolonged drought and flooding can affect food supply or distribution, making it even harder for people to access affordable and healthy foods that they need to stay resilient. Tribal and indigenous communities are already seeing their homes, livelihoods, cultural practices, and access to traditional first foods threatened by climate change. These areas are being lost due to rising sea levels or drought, and some tribes are even preparing relocation plans as a result. And finally, today's youth and future generations will experience more profound impacts of climate change as it worsens over time, from adverse health impacts to the financial implications of needing to shore up our infrastructure. So these disparities, the communities directly experiencing them, and the principles of climate justice must be at the heart of our climate activism, and as we learn more, so we can ensure a more just, resilient climate future. So I am now going to hand it over to Sophia to share the results of a county-wide survey on climate change and equity to get an idea of what most people are concerned about right here in our county related to climate change.
Thank you so much, Grace. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Sophia. Today I will be discussing the Lane Community Climate Survey results with you. The survey was released in May of 2021 in both English and in Spanish. The results have been used by the Lane County Community Task Force to inform various workshops and outreach efforts. In regard to the survey, there were 349 total respondents, the majority of whom were from Eugene, Florence, Springfield, and Veneta, respectively. Before discussing any of the results of the questions relating to climate, I wanted to give you some more information about who participated in the survey. So as you can see here, this is a graph showing the general age of the respondents of the survey. And as you can see, the majority of the people who participated were over the age of 65. This next graph, oh, I clicked too fast, shows the races or the ethnicities of the people who participated in the survey, and as you can see, the majority of the people were white, identify as white. This was the first question that we asked about in the survey. Out of the 5, this question asked about the areas in which people desire more education. Out of the 5 answer choices, people say that the majority of people want to learn more about how to prepare for various climate change impacts. Every single question that we proposed had a comment section for people to voice any in-depth answers that they had. So in this comment section, people specifically mentioned wanting to learn more about the impacts of climate change on coastal communities, the role of the government in climate change mitigation, the role of individuals in helping those who've been impacted by climate change, as well as the role of individuals in helping the environment and protect our natural resources. This next question asked about where people get their information during climate emergencies. And as you can see, the majority of people get their information from newspapers and their affiliated websites. The local radio stations, KLCC and KEPW, were frequently mentioned in the comments, as were the local news station Channel 9, scientific journals, and nonprofit websites. This question was very in-depth. It asked people about how climate change threatens the people and places that we care about. And out of these 6 categories given, each one had their own little comment section, so I'm just going to briefly go over what people were thinking. Relating to jobs, a lot of people were worried about how changes in job supply and demand will, or how this job supply and demand will change with climate change, as well as there's a large concern for our outdoor workers. There is regarding health, there's a general want to learn about, people are concerned about air quality impacts on our respiratory systems, as well as the impact of heat on our bodies, and a possible introduction of new diseases that may be able to survive here as the climate changes that couldn't survive here before, as well as the impact of climate anxiety on our mental health. Relating to housing, as there's already such an urgent housing crisis in Lane County, people are worried that an increase in climate refugees may lead to an increase in houselessness in Lane County. Regarding the safety of our community, just the overall safety, a lot of people are worried about the increase in wildfire frequency as we've been experiencing. And people are worried about what happens if these wildfires reach our urban boundaries. And there's just a general worry about outdoor safety decreasing. Related to education, people are worried about, specifically teachers are worried about decreased opportunity for outdoor education for children. People are worried about the lack of education about climate change. People want to know how they can educate climate change deniers. There was also mention about how a decrease in affordability and accessibility of education, and since education is already so unaffordable, people are worried about how economic fluctuations that can be associated with climate change will impact the affordability and accessibility of our education. And lastly, related to access to food and water, people are worried about how droughts are going to threaten our water access. People are also worried about the fragility of our industrial food systems and how, will they be able to produce enough food with our changing climate? This last question, we listed these 6 climate priorities, and we wanted to know which ones were most important to people. And the most popular answers were actions that protect natural resources, actions that increase access to renewable energy, actions that improve the health and safety of community members, and actions that address emergency preparedness from climate impacts. I think it's important to note here that the options that were centered around saving money were less of a concern to our community members than those that were centered around protecting the environment and our natural resources. I will now pass it off to Paige.
Thank you.
So what I'm going to be discussing is the vulnerability assessment, and this was conducted for Lane County to understand the causes and impacts of climate change specifically to Lane County. And the goal of this is really to take action and build resilience to climate change for residents within Lane County. When conducting this study, we used the whole community resilience framework, and so this really made sure to ensure that all sectors of our community were included in the process. So for example, if there was someone from health services or infrastructure, we would bring someone in from the county who does deal with roads, but then also someone who lives in these communities. So there's 2 different perspectives that are actually provided, and how you live there and how you actually accomplish community planning. And then the major community systems that we're focused on were the built, natural, cultural, economic, and human. And then we did conduct a stakeholder workshop, which then assessed what the high priority vulnerabilities would be. And people were divided up into groups to discuss a specific either economic or built. And they would talk about what vulnerabilities would come from climate change, from the built environment, or for the natural systems that exist. And they really worked how to, or what vulnerabilities were going to be there, and how high of a risk they would be. And so the vulnerability assessment first starts with climate change trends, and these were developed from the GEOS Institute primer that they conducted. And so it really, I'm going to touch on a few things. One of them was temperature. In Lane County itself, in the past 4 years, it has warmed 0.2 degrees. And then by the 2050s, it's projected to go up 4 to 7 degrees Fahrenheit. Precipitation, average of precipitation may not change, but you could be seeing wetter winters and drier summers, less snowfall at higher elevations, and this will affect stream flow, which means more precipitation versus less snowpack, and then stream flow greater during winter and summer, and then sea level rise as well. Areas that hug the coastline could rise 4 feet and result in significant flooding. And then I chose to focus on climate change impacts on coastal communities. And so one of them was specifically in health and emergency services. Flood-prone areas could have more social services at capacity due to recurring disasters. And this could really affect vulnerable communities that really rely on those social services. Health risk from reduced water quality in wells, natural systems, loss of marine life due to ocean acidification, stress on culturally relevant species such as lamprey, decrease in water availability, increased salinity from sea level rise will impact native species in these watersheds. And then for infrastructure, low-lying communities are at risk due to storm surges along the Siuslaw River, and sea level rise as well will affect this. And then groundwater sources are drying up well, which will continue to affect water infrastructure. And then in business and economy, a reduced amount of marine resources to be harvested, which could affect the increased cost of it. Outdoor workers are going to be affected by wildfire, smoke, and extreme weather events. And then tourism and recreation,
will decline or could decline due to extreme weather events. And then culturally, right now we're seeing a lot of indigenous communities have lack of access to culturally relevant foods such as eel or salmon. And then also, and especially in rural areas, there's a decrease in ability for self-sustaining food production as climate changes as well. And so what we're truly trying to work on is what can we do and how can we help our community. So within Lane County, Beyond Toxics is partnering with NAACP and the Lane County to really develop a climate equity and resiliency task force, which we're restarting recruiting for right now. And we're wanting to really look at the vulnerabilities and how can we strategize to help adapt to climate change as it begins to affect Lane County. And so we're looking to hold a strategies workshop to the vulnerability assessment, which will be held in the spring. And we're really going to be there to work on with different sectors of the community to help solve these issues. And then I'll pass it over to Grace to talk about our statewide climate planning.
Yay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paige. So yeah, shifting to, I focus on statewide climate policy, so track developments happening in Oregon and how they relate to other states within our region and abroad. So we also want to invite you to join us by engaging in statewide policy and developments. These are really important opportunities to raise your voice to state level decision makers, especially bringing in your unique perspectives, living on the coast and sharing your lived experiences and what you're concerned about, building on what Sophia shared. I heard last from the audience, maybe that's validating, but there are people out there who share your similar concerns. Polling shows that only, we know that 1 in 4 folks are really concerned about the climate change. However, somewhere around 7% of people are actually talking about it often. So talking about what you hear today and what your concerns are with other people, sharing that out with your community, and then elevating that to people making those plans and establishing these programs that will help us mitigate and adapt to the changing effects is so important. So for example, thanks to over 7,600 public comments that were submitted to the Department of Environmental Quality, the commission leading that department recently voted to approve its climate protection program. So this program is going to guide us toward a fossil-free future by requiring that oil companies and fossil gas utilities and big industrial emitters have to cut their greenhouse gas emissions in half by the year 2035. The program will also fund up to $500 million annually in community climate investment projects to support cleaner and cheaper and healthier energy and transportation options in communities of color, tribal, low-income, rural, and coastal communities across the state. We're also engaging closely with the Oregon Global Warming Commission, which has been working hard to cut back greenhouse gas emissions across the state, as well as increase carbon sequestration. So that's the ability of trees, vegetation, and healthy soils to draw down carbon from our atmosphere and just lock it away. And so that takes place on our forests, our agricultural lands, and on our coastal wetlands. So there is a bill actually that is going to be up for consideration during the upcoming short session beginning in February that would increase protection and restoration of carbon-rich, tidally influenced coastal ecosystems through investments in updating estuary management plans and conservation and restoration of these wetlands, as well as lead to a workforce study to ensure that folks have good paying jobs as these much needed changes happen. In addition to increasing carbon sequestration, restoring and protecting coastal wetlands offers so many other important benefits as well. Improved fish and wildlife habitat, protection for coastal communities from storm surges, buffers against sea level rise, and reduction in ocean acidification, and supporting the coastal economies that rely on these ecosystems for tourism, protection, and so much more. So finally, one way to get involved, we are always open to hearing your narratives. Please reach out to us at Beyond Toxics. We're always looking for folks to tell us and share how they've been affected by the climate crisis so that we can collaborate or support community-led movements to help affect change locally and across the state. So, next slide. Last slide. One way to really, get involved with these processes, local or statewide. Shameless plug, our e-news and our action alerts that we have available via our website or by email or on our social media channels, if that is something that you like to keep track of, is all available on our website, or we would be happy to stick around and talk with folks after the presentation happens and get you on an email list. So thank you so much for listening to us today. Appreciate it.
Are you going to allow any audience input?
At the end.
Good, thank you.
Oh, yeah, we're going to, at the end of the panel, we're going to have people come up and ask questions, so hold your questions. There are 3 or 4 seats up front here for those who are standing, and if you would like a seat. We have plenty of chairs in the closet, too, if you prefer to be back there. But there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seats in the front. No takers. Okay, well, that's all right. I can't sit that long either. I also wanted to mention I neglected the second half after we take a break and people can look at the electric vehicles. We're going to be showing the film Wisdom of the Elders, which was generously given to us specifically for today. The Siuslaw tribe and other tribes in the area have put together a film that it's 37 minutes long. I think we'll have time. We run over a little bit, it's okay, because there's nothing else happening at the church after 4 o'clock. I think it's very important that people will stay around for this film, because it gives you a perspective of indigenous people who have been living on this land for thousands of years. I think they might have some insight as to what's going on with the climate and how it affects indigenous peoples around the world. Now, our next speaker is Cody Kleinsmith, and that's why I had to put the light on. He is the Resource Assistant for Rural Environments, and he's an AmeriCorps member serving Lane County through July. Is that an internship?
It's the AmeriCorps program.
Pull the mic into your...
AmeriCorps program runs through July. It's an 11-month program. That I would be willing to talk with anyone about the details, after the fact.
And he is serving as the Climate Resilience Analyst, and in the coming months will be developing parts of our Community Climate Resilience Plan alongside the community partners and stakeholders. Graduated from University of Oregon in 2021 with a BS in Planning, Public Policy and Management, as well as Geography, and specializes in natural resources, land use, and environmental planning. Cody.
Hi everyone. I'm going to try and stay out of the way so you can see everything up here. So I'll do my best. If you can't hear me and I need to move closer to the microphone, please let me know. So I am our Climate Resilience Analyst here with the county, working for the county. And so we are going to talk about our Climate Action Plan today. With me is Mark Nystrom, my supervisor, who's the Climate Strategist. And then we just have a quick call out here that a lot of this data that you'll see later on during Mark's portion of the presentation and during this introductory section is compiled by Good Company. So what we're going to talk about is first is our impacts, and some of these our lovely friends from Beyond Toxics have already talked a little bit about, but we have some fun pictures at least that you'll get to see that are new. So let's talk about temperature first of all. So we have our summer temperature increase by 2100 is projected to be 10 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a big number. And then our winter temperature increase is a smaller number, but still very significant, 3 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit by 2100. Moving on from temperature, now we have a wildfire impact that's projected to grow by 2040, 400 to 500%, so that's 4 to 5 times the amount of wildfires in surface area. And then we also have our subalpine forests, so forests below the alpine levels on the mountains are projected by 2090 to convert nearly entirely to new vegetation types. That's partially due to those wildfires and the recovery aspect of it. They won't be able to recover into the same type of forest that they were right now. We also have, as they talked about, shifting precipitation patterns. We're projected to see generally the same amount of rainfall, but it's going to come in different ways. It's going to be less frequent, bigger storms, and it's also going to be a lot more snow, a lot more rain, a lot less snow. So you can see here in these images, these are courtesy of NASA, of the projections of what our snowpack on the Cascades are supposed to look like by 2040. Then also, looking here at Florence, we have sea level rise. These projections are by 2100. On the left here, or my left, we have the projected by 2100. If we take no mitigation action, that's the projected sea rise. And you can see a lot of that downtown region is supposed to be underwater. And then on the right, Old Town, sorry. And then on the right, we have, with a lot of mitigation actions, how we could mitigate that sea level rise. And in addition to the sea level rise, we're going to have some ocean acidification that's going to result in unhealthy environments for a lot of the aquatic life and even some of the human life that likes to recreate in the water.
Could you point out, before you move on, where downtown, Old Town is located?
So this is the Siuslaw
That's
Bridge,
a bridge.
and this is Old Town. I don't know what this neighborhood's called, but yeah, we're up here.
To the right of the bridge is Old Town.
Yeah, there's that creek that just runs just south of here, so we're probably right there.
And the right slide shows if there's mitigation.
Yeah, if aliens take over and we have a different federal government, here, and this is what's going to happen.
Thank you.
This is the same map I used for the flyer. If you got the flyer for the event, it has that. This is the left one with Old Town underwater.
And I'm more than happy to talk about these specific impacts after the fact, but we'll keep rolling through here. One more. So we're also projected to have, as they talked about, a lot of climate migration. This map here is direct damages to county GDP as a percentage. And so you can see down there in the south, there's a lot of damages that's going to be. There's a lot of people that are going to be looking for jobs, looking for economic opportunities. And if you look at Lane County, there's actually a little tiny bit of growth, but largely due to our agricultural season shifting. And so there's going to be a lot of people that would love to come work and get some economic benefits here in Lane County. And then in addition, as talked about by our Beyond Toxics friends, there's going to be some new disease patterns as we get warmer that are going to shift and bring things north up into Lane County. So now that we've talked about the impacts that are projected to come, we're going to talk about what over here at the county, what we're doing. So our climate action plan. And so this is a quote from the Climate Action Plan that reads, Lane County recognizes that climate change presents risks and exposes vulnerabilities that threaten long-term human and environmental health, social well-being, and economic vitality of the community. This is pulled directly from the statement from our Board of Commissioners in that board order that establishes our Climate Action Plan, talking about why we need this here in Lane County. So, our board order was passed in 2020. It establishes 6 resolutions as portions of it. We have an internal operations plan, how we as the county, as our administration, can reduce the amount of emissions we're putting out. We have our community mitigation plan, which Mark is going to talk about during his section in a little bit. That is, how can we reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that our community is putting out. We have a climate advisory committee, which has monthly meetings that helps advise us on how to move forward with the climate action plan as well as other climate activities. We have a community resilience plan, which is some of what I'm going to be talking about here in a little bit. That's currently just kicking off. It's going to develop alongside with what Beyond Toxics has talked about, the work that we're going to be doing to create a more resilient community. We have green job initiatives, which is largely undefined, but still worthwhile endeavor at the moment to create more green, eco-friendly job opportunities here in the county. And then we have a transparency to make sure that we're talking with our communities. We make sure that everyone knows what we're doing to work towards our climate action goals. So this is our tracker of 5 of those things. Transparency is not on here because that's kind of hard to track, but 5 of those things and where we're at as far as progress in them. So we have our climate advisory committee that's up and running. We have monthly meetings. It's a little bit short of our idealized version of it, so that's why there's a little bit left on that bar. They are recruiting. Yes, that's true. They are recruiting at this time. We have 3 vacant seats, but hopefully those will be filled soon. And if you're interested, you can talk to Mark about that. We have our phase 1, our internal plan, which is published. We're actually going to be doing our second version of that following an inventory that will be coming out later this year. Then we have our phase 2, our community greenhouse gas mitigation plan, and that is going to the board later this month for approval to be placed into action. It's currently in draft form. It's up on our website if you'd like to take a look at it, but Mark will be talking about it later. We have our community resilience plan, which is just kicking off, like I said, and then we have our climate-friendly economy initiatives, which hopefully we'll be getting some work done on it soon. So, now that we've talked about our whole process and the background of it, we're going to talk about that resiliency work. So, what we're going to talk about is resiliency at 4 kind of different scales here. And these are all linked together because one type of resiliency builds on the other type of resiliency. If I had a little bit more graphic experience, maybe I would have made it a circle, but each of these builds and interacts with each other. None of these are put into a box. If you're building household resilience, you're building community resilience. If you're building county resilience, you're building community resilience. So we're going to talk about some of the ways of what we can do as individual community members to build at these scales of resilience. So this first scale here is our household resilience. These are just some of the things that, similar to emergency planning, you'll see. So having things like evacuation routes and rendezvous points for you and your family members or whoever lives in your household. Signing up for local alert systems so you're aware of what's coming down as far as any emergencies. Having a contact outside the area, this is often overlooked when I find, but having someone that you can tell, yes, I'm okay, or no, I'm not, and I need some assistance. A tip I learned from an emergency preparedness person is with that contact, you want to send as short of messages as possible because those phone lines are going to be real crowded if something happens. Another thing is having 14 gallons of water per person is the ideal number. That's 2 weeks worth of water for each person in your household for if supply lines are cut and it's hard to find water, you want to have that available. Another tip I learned is if you get an emergency alert and you know something's coming, you can always just fill up that bathtub beforehand if you have the time. Another thing is dry food goods. You want to be able to eat, obviously, so having things that are not going to expire and you can keep, for 6 months at a time, things like canned goods or other dry cereals, that sort of thing. And then individual medical supplies, making sure that if you have a medication that you need to take daily, that you have enough, ideally, to last you those 2 weeks if needed. So that's our household resilience. Next, we're going to talk about community resilience. Part of this is just planning together with your neighbors and the people that live around you and are part of your community. If you're not talking with people, then it's going to be hard to know who needs assistance with what. Plan for and know your regional evacuation routes. I think the coast probably is the best community for that because I feel like we've got signs, we've got maps everywhere, but just making sure that you really know those and how they relate to the places that you spend most of your time. So how they relate to your home, how they relate to your work, other places that you spend a lot of time. Being aware of community members with disabilities. Some people are much more at risk during different hazards than others, so just being aware of if you have the capacity to help someone during these times, being aware of what kind of help they might need and where they might be at. And then spreading information to everyone. That's a real easy thing that we're doing right here, is just making sure people know about these different strategies and how to enact them. So before I jump into the larger scales, I wanted to talk about this real quick. This is our little spectrum of responsibility, because it's real easy for different people to come into a community and say, oh, you need to be more resilient. But that shouldn't be the case. It's not all on individual community members to make a community resilient. So in each of these, there are different things that different people can do. On the county side, there are things we can do to build individual resiliency, but there's also things you can do to build individual household resiliency. On the community side, there's community members that can contribute to building community resiliency, but there's also ways we as the county or community associations or towns can do that. Regional resiliency, that's something like here on the coast, there's ways that our regional governments can do that. There's ways that individual municipalities can do that. There's the ways Wayne County can do that. And there's also the ways that community members can do that. And then the same thing up here at the county level resiliency. As I said at the beginning, all these things build on each other. So when we look at this next slide, the most important thing here is down on the bottom, and this is for both regional and county resilience. Building resilience at the smaller scales helps build resilience at the larger scale. Because if we have resilient communities and resilient households, then overall the county is going to be much more resilient. And overall the region is going to be much more resilient. Other than that, what you can do to help build at these scales, because of that spectrum of responsibility, it's not as much on you. So what you can do is you can alert staff of natural and infrastructure concerns. You all are the experts of your lived experience out here in Florence. I've not been out to Florence not all that many times, you know much more than me out here. So just alerting staff of this is a concern area. And then being ambassadors for your community, representing your community at things like Board of Commission meetings, at our CAC even, at different kind of research or focus group level events to talk about, okay, I've alerted the staff, but I haven't heard anything back. I'd like to still advocate for my community. And then tied into that is attending those public meetings, information sessions, and engaging with staff. Just being able to really talk about those and make yourself known to those staff can automatically help them. If they have a concern of an area and know that you live in that area, just being able to talk to you about it and saying, what do you think about this? What strategy could work here? It's a very useful thing. So I believe that is it for me on the resilience aspect. Yeah.
Okay. I can skip the interim. Okay. It's fine. Can you hand me the computer?
Oh, you want me?
No.
Give you a little bit here.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Cody. And Mark Nystrom is Lane County's climate strategist, and he's been in that position since March of 2020. His role is to manage a multi-phase approach addressing the climate crisis as spelled out in a February 2020 board order. So, which board is that?
Lane County Board of Commissioners.
Oh, okay. Mark lives in Eugene and with his wife Stephanie and his dog Juniper. His son Sam is a freshman at Colorado College. Mark is also an instructor at the School of Planning, Public Policy, and Management. I had to look that up. At the University of Oregon. So take it away, Mark.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to buzz through a little bit, but I want to remind you, Cody was telling us that there's 3 phases to the climate action plan that the Board of Commissioners approved. We finished phase 1. That was our internal emissions operations. So we found out that our landfill is really bad. Our landfill is the 2nd largest stationary source of greenhouse gases in the county. And unfortunately, we can't control what y'all throw away, so that becomes problematic. We're looking at solutions to that. The 1st largest is one of the wood companies, spacing out the name right now.
Weyerhaeuser?
Not Weyerhaeuser, the other one. Anyway, Weyerhaeuser's, Kingsford's 3rd, but anyway, so then we went on and we looked at phase 2, which is the community greenhouse gas. Cody and I took this, the name of this program, What Can We Do, really literally. So we're offering you solutions of what you can do at home. So first of all, though, I want to highlight where our emissions come from. If you can see, starting on the left, we have building energy. That's our 2nd largest group or amount of energy. About half of that is natural gas. The other half is electricity. You live in a community that is blessed with 90% carbon-free electricity. There's some probably longevity issues, but for right now, we have great electricity. Natural gas has a lot of industrial applications that are really hard to change. These are all located in the Eugene-Springfield area, though, so you all don't have much to deal with that. Transportation energy is 66% of our emissions. So think I-5, 101, 126, 58, lots of big trucks going through is actually, we have a disproportional amount of diesel used in Lane County compared to the rest of the country. Waste disposal, I told you that our landfill, it actually accounts for about 80% of our operations emissions. You can see here it's only about 4% of the county's emissions. So that's how big the transportation energy is. So this giant landfill that's taking all the organic waste from all of Lane County, parts of Douglas County, we only account for about 4% there. Industrial processes and refrigerants, that's refrigerants mainly. Refrigerants, like think about it, they cool off your food, right? They're designed to trap heat. And so when they get lost up into the atmosphere, it's bad. They're about 1,000 to 25,000 times worse than carbon dioxide. So we want to make sure that those stay in our refrigerators and are repurposed properly. And then agriculture, forestry, and land use, we don't have all the data that we would like. This is the emissions associated with livestock. So cows and sheep are the ones that are responsible for the vast majority of that bar. The next 4 bars, the burgundy bars are upcycle emissions, upcycled emissions, not like the right word. Life cycle emissions, sorry. I combined 2 terms. So my cell phone here, I bought that, it came from Samsung, it's manufactured in China. 80% of the emissions associated with the cell phone were emitted before I opened the box. So the life of your cell phone, it doesn't matter too much compared to the upstream emissions. A little bit will be in the disposal, not much. So the key there is don't buy a lot of stuff. And that's really hard because we live in a society that is designed on growth and designed on consumption. It makes it hard. But if you actually look and break this down a little bit, and we aren't going to do that today, upstream fuel production. So again, another reason why we got to get away from fossil fuels. That last set of bars, we just wanted to demonstrate how much carbon our trees are sequestering every year. So Lane County is about 80% covered in forest. That's just 1 year growth. So on an annual basis, we're absorbing almost 100% of what we emit locally. It's about 50% total emissions. If you see, there is a little bit of a bar on there on the purchased carbon offsets. Northwest Natural offers a carbon offset program. Hardly anyone subscribes to it, and we need them to get more people to subscribe to it. They do good things with that money, but people just, it's an optional thing. So I'm going to tell you what our strategies are to reduce emissions, and then what you can do along those lines. So there's 2 strategies for each one. If we were to change all of our all of our automobiles, our single, like our home vehicles, our sedans, into electric vehicles, we could reduce 15.4 million metric tons by the year 2040. That's amazing. That's about, these 2 actions combined would reduce our emissions by about 60%. So when you're ready to change over to an EV, or get rid of your current car, buy an EV. You're not going to have much of a choice in a couple of years. Chrysler just announced that they're going to be 100% EV by 2028. And Volvo's already done that, a bunch of auto manufacturers. It's good stuff, yeah. At work, advocate for adding EV charging to your workspace. One of the big problems right now, the reason we didn't take our EV out here is there's no charging out here. And our car only has about 160 or 140 miles of range right now due to a software glitch. But so we needed charging, so we didn't bring it. And what's on the horizon, as I said, most are committed to 100% EVs by 2036. Renewable diesel, this is not a very fun one to talk about because no one really knows anything about this, but renewable diesel is, we use the word biodiesel and renewable a little bit interchangeably, but it's actually different. Renewable diesel is just manufactured in a slightly different way. Currently we have 5% biodiesel in diesel. So this is using a renewable source. So you can't find it publicly right now, but agencies like Lane County, eWeb, City of Eugene, they all use it because we can purchase it. Lane Transit District uses it as well. And so at work, if you live in an area, I'm trying to strong arm Florence into having to buy a bunch of it too. So I can tell you about that later. But so that might be a possibility. But what's on the horizon? We're building a couple refineries for renewable diesel in Oregon, not in Lane County, in northern Oregon. So we should have more access to that soon. Moving along, electric grid decarbonization. I'm not going to spend much time on this because our legislature made this way easier for us last year. We are going to have carbon-free electrical generation in Oregon by 2040. But in the meantime, sign up for your green power or smart energy program, whatever you have access to. Central Lincoln has some sort of program. But they will use those dollars. If you can afford it, you pay a little bit more, And they put all that money together and then they go build renewables with it. So it's a good thing. Residential appliance electrification, you all are on electric, so it's okay. But we're trying to get people in Eugene to transfer from natural gas over to electricity. And again, it's one of those things when your appliance starts to, like you're not pleased with it anymore, you need to replace it with an electric. Edible food waste reduction. Oh boy, this one's huge. We throw away a lot of food in this country, and a lot of it's because it's not attractive, which is sad. And so Lane County's been spending a lot of time trying to figure out how we can get food from food manufacturers and grocery stores that doesn't look good into the Food for Lane County program so that it's getting consumed. I mean, I'm old enough to remember like you'd still eat your old wrinkly apples because it was down in the basement. Now if they have like a slight bruise on them, people throw them away. It's very frustrating. So anyway, this one's hard to control though, because this one's that's sold like squarely on people's shoulders. So yeah, and so if you're at work, create a compost program. That's the best way to get rid of things. If you can't, if you do have waste, you're going to have some waste, right? Like there's peels, there's cores, things like that. And Oregon DEQ is one of the leaders in the world on this topic, so it's really helpful that we have their access. Mass transit, this is one of those things where you guys are like the poster children for why it's really difficult to offer good intercity mass transit. It's really hard, and we recognize you can't run that many buses because it's expensive, and there's just not as much demand. This is why the EVs come back into the kind of the discussion. We need EVs for this reason. But we just modeled and we looked at like what would happen if we increased it by 2.5 times, and that's on pre-COVID levels. It doesn't make that big of an impact because there's so many trucks and cars driving through Lane County. If you were to look at just Eugene alone, it would be a big deal. But our consumption is so much larger than what Eugene is, it makes it difficult. We're hoping that the Build Back America bill gets passed. The infrastructure bill did include some money. So we're hoping to see some improvement in our mass transit system coming up. Refrigerant management, the key thing here for you is if you have an old refrigerator, take it to our transfer station, tell them about it, and then pay the little $12 fee and get rid of it that way. We send it to a contractor who puts it in a vacuum and sucks all that stuff out. It's reusable too, which is great. This was one thing that actually happened during the Trump administration that was good. Didn't mean to say that like that, but maybe that's true. But we signed on to the Kilgallia agreement, so that means that we're going to be reducing our use of the nastiest of the refrigerants. And then walking, biking, teleworking, expansion. We want to make sure that everyone has broadband at home. That's like the big thing right now. You just need to have strong internet connection so you can telework. And then while you're but if you are here and you have concerns about biking or walking or rolling, make sure that you're letting your local transportation planners know. The Public Works Department here in Florence is great. They really are responsive. At work, propose incentives for those who can actively commute to the workplace. That might be like telling people, let's have a shower, or let's have locker rooms, or some sort of little space for people who can feel more comfortable coming into the office. And then there's a bunch of money coming down the road, so hopefully we can do that. Anaerobic digestion. This is this idea everyone, me too, throws organic stuff away occasionally, gets in the landfill, and we're going to build a machine, hopefully, to suck up all that methane that would come out before it goes into the landfill. It's really expensive, and it's only going to happen if we have public-private partnerships, because Lane County can't afford to do it on its own. And then energy conservation, energy efficiency and conservation. There's a ton of money out there that people aren't spending. So if you have a place of business or work, get an energy audit and then have your utilities pay you to fix things, because that's essentially what they'll do. They may not cover the whole cost of it, but they'll help you finance it if that's what you want to do. But our plan has an appendix that has a bunch of information on how you can find out all this stuff. And then finally, natural gas infrastructure. For whatever reason, this one is really controversial, but the city of Eugene is looking to change their building codes so that they will not allow natural gas infrastructure in new buildings, under residential new buildings, excuse me. And so this is very controversial, but it doesn't matter too much to the Florence folks, but there are some rebates available to electrify. And I think I hope the state will take some action on this particular one. All right, oh yeah. So when you add all these up, when all of us do what we can do, you can see that if we did all these actions, the darker colors are what would actually happen. The smaller, lighter colors are what we still are looking for technology. We're excited that the fact that we think with existing technologies we can reduce 73% of our emissions in the county. That's a long ways there by 2040. New technologies are coming. They're going to help us. So we're hoping for the best. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's a lot to take in. We do have one more panelist who is a local activist here. A lot of people probably know that Mike and Pat Allen have been out in front of the City Council for over 2 years, trying to get some things going with the city. Actually, I saw him out at the farmer's market with his sign, and I guess I'd been here about a year. It's been about 2 years since I moved, and I saw him and I thought, well, I've signed a petition, what else can I do? So I'm doing a few things, and hopefully everyone is as well in this room. He's the founder of Florence Climate Emergency Campaign, which has conducted 123 Friday climate strikes in front of City Hall for over 2 years, as I mentioned. They also advocate for the expansion of climate curriculum for the students in the Siuslaw School District. This is an area where we need more contact with the schools. So if you have that might be something you want to talk to Mike about. He's also state chair of the Oregon chapter for Elders Climate Action, and he'll be speaking about, now that you're educated about the impacts of climate change, it's time to become a climate activist. Mike.
Hey, great. Can you all hear me back there? Good. So it's good for me. I'm going to read this because I put a lot of time in trying to think through what I wanted to present to you on that theme. So first of all, it's good for me to follow all this wonderful information about the impacts of climate change on our community. It's my role now to talk about taking action. The question is, what kind of action? Is it something you can do personally? Or is it kind where you join with others to demand big systemic change that only large entities like city governments and school districts can do? Both are important, and you don't have to limit yourself. Of course, some will say it's too big a job and do nothing. The young Swedish activist Greta Thunberg responded to that concern when she said, "You must do the impossible, because giving up is never an option." Ted Turner framed it this way: while the problem can sometimes seem overwhelming, we can turn things around. But we must move beyond climate talk and take climate action. In my case, I was convinced early on that I must do something. Back in the 80s, Pat and I explored building an off-the-grid passive solar earthship. She's going to hold up a picture of it.
That's cool. That's when I had dark hair.
It's made of dirt, ram tires, and bottles, so they do recycling. It was a lot of fun going to a construction site in southern Colorado and pounding dirt into tires with a sledgehammer. We never built one, but our next home in New Mexico was designed to be passive solar. Eventually we went full-time in our RV. We were motivated to add solar panels so we could go entirely off the grid, which we did for a while on BLM land in the desert south of Quartzsite in Arizona. When we arrived here in Florence 7 years ago and moved into our home, we were concerned about our carbon footprint, so we got serious. Solar panels were ruled out because of trees, but we were lucky since Central Lincoln was offering the purchase of community solar panels on their buildings in Florence. We bought 2 of them, and during the sunny days, our electricity costs are reduced by up to $10 per month. Long time to pay it back, but still a little bit of help. Now we had a ductless heat pump installed by a local company. It reduces our electricity costs by nearly 50% in the coldest winter months and provides steady, even heat. To ensure our home was energy efficient, we hired a specialist from Coos Bay to do an energy audit on our home. Our score was 80 out of 100, so we picked a good one. We followed up on his recommendation to tighten up the insulation under the house and added a storm door to our front entrance to get ourselves up to 100%. This is a short list of what we and others are doing. We recently bought an electric bike and resorted to composting our food waste, recycling glass and plastics, and eating less meat. But no, we aren't going to become vegan. You would think that this would be enough for us to feel that we were doing our part to address climate change, but it wasn't. My activism really started in earnest when then President Trump withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement. Knowing that this would result in our national government doing very little to combat climate change, I began looking for other ways to address the problem. I discovered that many mayors of cities, large and small, were becoming climate mayors. In so doing, they made pledges to act. I asked Mayor Henry to join these mayors, some of whom were in Oregon. He emphatically declined, saying, "I won't embarrass our president." Coincidentally, I discovered an analysis by the Rocky Mountain Research Institute in Colorado in which they determined the impact of 3,000 existing climate commitments. This caught my eye since I previously took courses with the Institute on the use of renewable energy for my home. The article made the observation that if enough cities and businesses worldwide pledged to address climate change, we could reach 2/3 of the goals set by the Paris Agreement. That revelation set me into action, and I petitioned the Florence City Council to make the pledge to do something. It was ignored. That angered me and others, so I expanded my activism to include a petition, which is over there, and Friday climate strikes in front of City Hall that I continue to this day. As was said earlier, Pat and I completed strike 123 this last Friday. It's good that Mark Levy chose a film by the Siuslaw tribe titled Wisdom of the Elders to close our event. It reminded me of an interview I had past month with a graduate student whose thesis was to understand the climate actions taken by older citizens. And I meet that category, as do many of us in the room here today. He is of Swedish and Philippine descent, but studying in Japan. It was Greta Thunberg in Sweden, where he grew up, who inspired him to pursue this topic when he spoke of the generational divide. Our hour-long interview made me reflect on why I became a climate activist. In my case, education driven by science and anger caused by the inaction of our elected officials resulted in my taking immediate action. As a community organizer for disability rights in Colorado and New Mexico, and an activist for the abolition of death penalty in New Mexico, I learned from experience to abide by 2 mantras. The first is to be persistent, consistent, and insistent with your activism. Some causes may take years before you are successful. When I arrived in Florence and met resistance and inaction, despite following these 3 tenets, I learned to operate with the following guidelines: education, action, and escalation. In my column in the Community Voices section of the Siuslaw News titled Threads of Activism, I've written about these 5 tenants. Next month, I will write about escalation. More and more activists, particularly the young, are resorting to direct actions, many of which are nonviolent civil disobedience. This is my story. Each of you also could tell us your own unique story that led you to come to our panel today. The problem is not enough of us today recognize that we are facing an existential threat to ourselves, our children, grandchildren, and the health of our planet. Others erroneously believe that our small city and we individually cannot make a difference. You can write letters to the editor. Oops, I jumped ahead. I'm going to give you a list in a minute. I knew this was going to happen. The alarms we see every day in the news, and now closer to home with floods, mudslides, and fire, have not inspired enough of us to take immediate action, and that includes our students. Many believe we do have a crisis, but have not seen a way to act. Your climate actions can range from the personal, that require changes in lifestyle, to the courageous, that influence our family, friends, and the people we elect. Acting together in a coordinated way will result in systemic and long-lasting change. I will now describe actions we all can take to mitigate climate change and to provide the resilience needed to adapt to the inevitable changes that will come our way. A first step is to increase your level of understanding that actions must be immediate, comprehensive, and enduring. Learn to treat the climate crisis like you treat the COVID pandemic. You can join climate activist organizations. They provide a wealth of information and offer many collective ways to enhance your impact. Examples are, as mentioned, the Florence Climate Emergency Campaign, which I founded, Elders Climate Action and its Oregon chapter, of which I'm the leader, 350.org, Extinction Rebellion out of the UK, Bill McKibben's Third Act for those over 60, a new one, Arm in Arm for those over 30, and for the young, the Sunset Movement. You can act to demand our Siuslaw School Board expand the climate curriculum for students in grades K through 12. Attend school board meetings and give written and public testimony, not once, but as often as it takes to get it done. Our younger generation needs knowledge and skills to protect themselves and our planet. You can support Reverend Reynolds in providing scholarships to student climate activists and a meeting place at the church for a Climate Justice Club. You can support climate activists running for public office with your time and your money. Vote for climate champions. Better yet, be an active participant in government and run for office yourself. Seats up for election this year include the Florence Mayor and City Council positions, the Lane County Board of Commissioners, and the Oregon House of Representatives. You can attend Friday climate strikes to demand the City Council act on the climate crisis. Your participation will bring attention to the need to remove climate deniers and replace them with climate activists. You can sign our climate petition. Numbers count. We now have 656 signatories from the local area and from across the state, the country, and the world, the farthest being from India, believe it or not. We get a lot of interesting tourists coming through. You can attend city council meetings and give public input, both verbal and written. Do the same with the city's Environmental Advisory Committee. Shortly, it's called EMAC, as you know. You can write letters to the editor of the Siuslaw News that educate and motivate the community to act now and into the future. You can support Mark and Cody with the implementation of the Lane County Climate Action Plan by attending workshops and filling out surveys. You can support Grace Brahler and Beyond Toxics and the others in their work with the Climate Equity and Resilience Task Force that Paige is working on, a diverse group charged with ensuring equity is factored into the Lane County's Climate Action Plan, and I am a member of that task force myself. You can become active at the state level by advocating with our state legislators for dollars from the infrastructure bill to be used by school districts for their replacement of school buses with zero-emission electric buses, one of the biggest polluters in our town and the largest fleet. You can take personal actions in your own homes in the way you travel and how you eat. You can check out home energy audits, switch to zero-emission vehicles, recycle, compost, and avoid waste. We had a wonderful list that Mark gave you earlier. Stop trying to change the minds of climate deniers. It's a waste of effort. They will only react to intense and relentless pressure. Put your energy into finding like-minded people and work together. Always, always respond to calls for immediate action. Better yet, use your own creativity to move us forward. Remember that action is the antidote to despair. The new year will bring up many, many new avenues for getting involved. Make a resolution to become a climate activist and follow through with actions. Al Gore, when vice president, said it best with these words: believe in the power of your own voice. The more noise you make, the more accountability you demand from your leaders, the more our world will change for the better. In closing, I'd like to thank our host, Reverend Dawn Reynolds. For offering the use of St. Andrew's Church for our event. Since I like inspirational quotes, I will offer one that Reverend Reynolds uses at the end of her emails. And it came from St. Augustine of Hippo. Hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are anger and courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they do not remain as they are. Lastly, I wish to thank Mark for our Mark behind us here, Mark Lee, for all the time and effort he has put in organizing today's event, along with all the others that have come together to make it happen. Thank you, Mark. With this type of dedication, we will make a difference. During the break, please visit my display. See Pat over there. And if you aren't already a signatory, take a major step in becoming a climate activist by signing our petition to the mayor and city council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, well, we're getting on in time here. I did want to, if people want to line up behind that mic stand there, this mic will be on it if you have comments and questions. But while we're doing that, I want to before we get to, I want to thank a few other people. David Daniel for volunteering his time with the sound system and working it so that everyone could be heard. Jay Guettler, who's filming over here, gratis. And let's see. Well, there's a few people that came and helped set up yesterday. I don't know everybody's names actually, but if I leave you out, you know who you are. And I also like to say that even though we had a lot of volunteer help, we did have some expenses. The advertising is in the news is not free, as you probably can imagine. So while we're having some questions, I'm going to double up a little bit and pass this bucket around, and people have donations. Please stick them in the bucket and get it back up here once you're done. We also have electric vehicles in the parking lot if people want to go out and check them. And then we'll come back, after questions and a little bit of a break, we'll come back and we'll see the film Wisdom of the Elders from the Siuslaw tribe. So.
Thank you. My name is Frank Smith, and I guess I've been an environmentalist for over 75 years. I was doing recycling in the Second World War. I don't look that old, but I feel it. Anyhow, one of the interesting things that we haven't spoken about extensively, Mike did a little bit, was about public attitudes. I went to a meeting yesterday of our county commissioner candidate from Junction City, and our current state house member. And it was held in Mapleton. There were less than 15 people there, sitting closely together except for the speaker, who was the candidate for county commission. And I was the only one wearing a mask. The only one wearing a mask. They talked about timber resources. To them, a mature tree is only good for making lumber. They don't understand anything about carbon exchange. I was appalled at being in the middle of the pandemic with no social distancing and no masks and no resistance to it. I had a mask on. Nobody else picked up on the clue. And I mean, most of us have known somebody not terribly distant from us that have died. We've lost almost 1 million people in the pandemic, and these people don't get it. And they're the same people who don't understand that natural gas isn't the way to heaven. I'm really serious about this. It's quite disturbing. They don't understand anything about the environment. They're denialists. And they're blockheads. And I say that to their face. I'm not shy about it at all. They're absolute denialist blockheads. And when you're dealing with this, we haven't talked about it, but you do need to write about that level of it, and talk about that level of imbecility. Now, I've got grandchildren that I worry about. They're going to have to grow up in an environment stuck with most of the same Supreme Court that we have now for the rest of their lives. I mean, we've got a really serious problem. And the problem is public attitudes, staggering misinformation. I argued with these people with numbers about the virus, for instance, about climate change, and got nowhere with them because they have a set of answers that they've gathered from One American Network and Fox News and other BS sources. And that's the real enemy here. The enemy is not so much the usage, the enemy is the information. Thank you very much.
I don't know if we can answer that question right away.
That's quite a question.
You need to be more direct, though, Frank.
I try.
Next.
But to answer Frank, though, we are working hard.
You might be off.
Oh, well.
Yeah, you're off.
Hello?
No.
Oh, there it was.
Now it started. We're working.
Can you hear us? Yeah, okay. We're working hard, Frank. We're with you.
I've been there. And I appreciate you and Pat have done wonderfully.
Frank is a climate warrior. He's been wounded in action.
I was fighting forest fires 65 years ago.
I mean, literally, on a strike.
Hi, I'm Robert. I've worked with your group. I forget who was in charge of it 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Lisa, yes.
Still has it up.
Is she still there?
Yes.
I may still be on your website, I don't know.
Okay.
But if you are, my ego says leave it there, but my emails say take me down. When I was put up, just to give everybody who I am, what you guys do for the environment, I do for trees. Okay, I protect trees. And that's one word I want to remove from your vocabulary is the word forest. We don't have a forest in Oregon. We have a monocrop. Okay? The monocrop is a GMO tree that doesn't support life other than a 2x4. That's all it's good for. So please stop calling it a forest. And the reason I did that is the week before I was on your website, I got 6 emails a week. After I got on your website, I got 600 a day.
Wow.
Because I was fighting the monocrops. And we won, actually, we did. I don't know if anybody's seen the timber cuts on 126 of the old Davidson property. My wife and I and a bunch of other people got together and said, hey, this is wrong. We fought them I'm human resources, and so I know how to stop people from working. And I basically shut down their contamination of the soil, the air, the water, and everything else. And I made it just so cost ineffective to them to pollute that they just gave up. And out of the 15,000 acres, they polluted 10.
Good.
And I was mad at the 10, but there was nothing I could do about it. But thank you for allowing me to get the 600 a day, and it really helped. So
Thank you.
say hi to Lisa for me.
I absolutely
She'll
will.
remember, just the tall, ugly guy with the she'll know who I am.
I
But
would love to pass that on. Thank you.
good resource to them if you ever want to get involved with them.
Yeah, good.
And whatever I can do for you, I'm more than happy.
Great. I got you on my list.
Except I won't teach you how not to do work, so.
Well, hi, thank you, it was a great presentation. You mentioned a bill, somebody mentioned a bill, and I shot my hand up in the air, and then I went, oh, they want questions at the end. What bill is that? And I don't have my pen with me, so.
There you go.
What bill is that you were saying is gonna be presented?
Yeah, we're still waiting with the short session. It moves really quickly, and so we're still waiting for, sorry. So we're still waiting for, I don't think this is on, actually.
There might be a little button on it that you can turn it on, perhaps.
Check.
Anyway, I'm here, I can hear you. I'll say it out loud. If you say it, I'll say it into this microphone.
Sure. So we're waiting, this week is when that bill will be posted, so it hasn't, there we go, thank you. So it hasn't been posted in full yet to the Oregon legislative system. So it's a natural working lands and waters bill. But if you follow us, we'll give you an update. Sorry, I don't have a title or a name yet, or a number even.
Oh, it probably doesn't either.
Yes.
Okay, well, and then my other question is, I heard you guys, somebody mention a partnership where if you get your business to work with the utility company, there's money available to do work on something or other.
Yep.
And even though I don't have a business like that, I have my little business in a place that's a much bigger business. And they're kind of tight wads, but yesterday I took a picture of one of their electrical outlets that had started a little fire. And I showed it to the manager, and she said, oh, I have to do something about that. So it could be a good moment to talk to them about electricity, etc. Got any more ways to make that connection about that program, Mark Nystrom?
Yeah, sure. I would just, my recommendation is you are all served by Central Lincoln PUD. They have some really responsive folks on their team, and I would just reach out to them because they're going to have, I don't know about like repairs of individual outlets, but they'll have stuff about.
The whole building needs an overhaul where my office is.
Right, and so they're not gonna hand out $50,000, but which might be the dollars necessary, but they're gonna help you find financing, and they're gonna be able to help you with those kind of resources.
So
yeah.
you think starting there and trying to make a connection then with the owners of that building?
Well, yeah, the owners will ultimately have to make that connection.
But Central Lincoln can't talk to them. The owners are gonna have to decide to talk to Central Lincoln.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, get the owners of the building to talk to Central Lincoln. There is help available out there.
Okay, well, there you go. Here we go. You can do it.
Any other questions or comments?
I just have a curiosity question. I don't need to come up, that's all right. Do you know if Central Lincoln is doing anything still about solar panels?
I can jump in on that if you want. I've been working with them a little bit. Community solar is this idea where the utility will put out solar panels that are available for the community members to purchase. It doesn't pencil out in the long run for people unless they get a grant to go along with it. So they received a grant from the Bonneville BEF, Environmental Foundation, that's what it is, Bonneville Environmental Foundation. So that's, they're the people who own all the big, it's their nonprofit arm. And so what they do is they'll give out grants from time to time. Central Lincoln is open to doing another one. The problem is that the payback period goes from 10 to 12 years to 20 years without that grant funding. So it's just, most people are not that interested at that point. In Lane County, we're trying to do something right now with Emerald People's Utility District. We own some property and we're willing to put some panels on it. But again, it's expensive, even for a small array. And for bang for your buck, you're better off getting an EV at this point. Yeah.
I bought 2 of those, by the way, and they had somebody come talk to us about that program from Central Lincoln, and they talked about also doing it for like hospitals, also for like school districts, but like what Mark is saying is they need to get some grant incentives to be able to continue doing that. Talk it up though with them. They sold, the community really wants them. They sold out their whole set of arrays within a week. That fast. I bought 2. So you could buy up to 4 at that time, and they just sold right out. Thanks for that question.
So I'm basically not the person that really wants to talk about this, but my husband is in a wheelchair back there, and his voice won't carry, so I'm going to try to give the messages he would like to talk about. So, with respect to payback and what have you, I think there are 2 ways to look at that. One is, what are you going to get out of it? And the other is, what are you going to do for your community? Now, we do happen to have solar arrays on our house, and there are times when our electric bill is 0, and we do have all electric, and I cook a lot, and we have an electric car that we plug in. So we're not looking, and we're very old, so we're not looking for us to get some kind of payback. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and it is economically. If you got some, and it's going to be better because the government is going to be put some money into it eventually, if we can get beyond the whatever you call it. So is there anything I missed? And I did leave the name of the guy who did the installations. They're out of Eugene, and the solar panels are made in California, so it is an American-made stuff. So you feel good about that, and you feel good about having them, really. Yeah. And we've had solar collectors on our house when we were in Colorado back in the 70s. Yep. So, and we had all solar then, and so we still do it. It's a good way to go. Anything else?
Let's have a hand for all our panelists.
I did want to thank Nan, though. Nan has been an early striker for us, and she made these wonderful signs that we put out every time.
Whoa.
The Bromer. Thank you, Nan.
So there are still a few people outside looking at the EVs, but I made an announcement. We're going to show the film shortly. If you want to, it's only about a half an hour long. If you want to get up and stretch, we're going to get that set up now. And then another part is give a yell, and you sing give a yell back to me. So we can try that. Sound the bell. Sound the bell. Sound the bell. Ring the alarm from sea to sea and ring it well. Give a yell. Give a yell. Tell everyone you know to sound the bell. From the Arctic to the Amazon, the planet's plan is changing. Our part in this is crystal clear, our weather rearranging. Will we watch and wait with this disaster in the making? It's up to us to sound the bell, so all of us are waking. Sound the bell, sound the bell. Ring the alarm from sea to sea and ring it well. Give a yell, give a yell. Tell everyone you know to sound the bell. The earth is heating up and our carbon is to blame. We all must do our part, or it will never be the same. Cut back on those emissions and prepare to stem the tide. If not, we'll be accomplices to global suicide. Sound the bell, sound the bell. Ring the alarm from sea to sea and ring it well. Give a yell, give a yell, give a yell, give a yell. Tell everyone you know to sound the bell. How many fires? How many superstorms? How many drought years must become the norm? How many floods? How many icebergs gone? How long will Earth sustain the ground we walk upon? Sound the bell, sound the bell. Ring the alarm from sea to sea and ring it well. Give a yell, give a yell, give a yell, give a yell. Tell everyone you know to sound the bell. We've seen our carbon footprints tread the lands of our birth, the polluted heavens raining down a deadly hell on earth. Will you hide in your bunkers where your money is no good? What will your kids inherit? 'Cause you won't do what you should. Sound the bell, sound the bell. Ring the alarm from sea to sea and ring it well. Give a yell, give a yell, give a yell, give a yell. Tell everyone you know to sound the bell. How many tornadoes? How many hurricanes? How many heat-related deaths? How many flooding claims? Half the world is in a drought, the other half is flooded. Will you step up to the plate, or are you that cold-blooded? Sound the bell, sound the bell. Ring the alarm from sea to sea and ring it well. Give a yell, give a yell, give a yell, give a yell. Tell everyone you know to sound the bell. From the Arctic to the Amazon, the planet's plan is changing. Our part in this is crystal clear, our weather rearranging. Will we watch and wait with this disaster in the making? It's up to us to sound the bell, so all of us are waking. Sound the bell, sound the bell. Ring the alarm from sea to sea and ring it well. Give a yell, give a yell, give a yell, give a yell. Tell everyone you know to sound the bell. One more time. Sound the bell, sound the bell, let me hear ya. Ring the alarm from sea to sea and ring it well. Give a yell, give a yell, give a yell, give a yell. Tell everyone you know to sound the bell. Tell everyone you know to sound the bell. Tell everyone you know to sound the bell. Thank you. Singing through a mask isn't my favorite thing. But you helped me out, which is good. And again, thank you all for coming. I'm planning an event in probably early April. Need to get over this one first, personally, but take what you've learned and spread it far and wide, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you all.